it did, but we have new board members, and I wanted to see where they all stood. For me, I've been researching this machine and the other machines for quite some time. And apparently out in the world and in the United States, we have two separate ways to look at it. The mainstream media says there is no cheating. Most of the other election experts have all been discredited by the mainstream media. When anyone comes forward and says there is no election fraud, the mainstream media supports those claims. And so it's pretty obvious with the size of country that we have, and with electronic problems that we've seen throughout every system, there is going to be some level of problem. And to say that there is none would be impossible. So for Dominion, for me, for this contract, Dominion has to prove to me that we have a free and fair election. You have to prove that if I'm going to support this contract. You're going to have to prove those electronic images. You're going to have to approve those ballots, the envelopes. I want to see it. And when I have a person coming forward saying we'd like to do an audit, and many have, and I have a member of the public that says he'll even pay for it, but yet the ROV refuses to do so, you have lost my trust. And that's what it comes down to. Throughout this nation now today, more than half, in some polls, up to 80% of the people do not trust electronic machines. We do not trust them. And we have to restore trust. That is a super important thing in America today, is to restore trust. Whether fraud has happened here in Shasta County or not is not the point. The point is we have to know it. You have to prove it. You have to prove it, and then we can restore trust. And that's what we have to do. And I don't see Dominion being able to do that. I don't see that them coming forward and saying, we're going to be open and transparent. Anything you want to know, we'll show you. That's not the response that I've been hearing. I've been getting a different effect. So I'm not happy with this machine. 20 years ago, we counted ballots by hand. The population of this county has only grown by 10,000 people during that time. To say we can't do it is not factual. What we're legally able to do is a different question within the state of California. Today, before us today, all that we have is, do we support this contract or not? There'll be future discussions as to what we do to restore trust to our voters. Because today I have no trust. And I've equated it a lot like to a very good poker player that happens to cheat occasionally. He's very good. He doesn't have to cheat all the time. He doesn't need to cheat sometimes. But he cheats when he needs to or wants to, if he cannot get, and especially if he feels he will not get caught. Does he cheat every time? No. Just because we're all sitting up here and elected does not mean we had free and fair elections every single time. And for me, watching very closely the 2022 primary elections here in Shasta County, I saw lots of concerns. What I want to see out of our ROV and Dominion is to say, let's research it. Let's go over everything. Let's be transparent. Let's go over everything to make sure that we did not get outside influence into our machines. I didn't see that. And the reality is on these electronic machines, it most likely did not come from the local office. That outside interference comes from afar. But you're going to have to prove that to me, that that will not happen. And I have not seen any proof so far. And that's why I wanted to bring this up. And so with that, before I make a motion, I do have Supervisor Cry up first.
Thank you, Supervisor Jones. So I know what's on our agenda here is discussing the contract with Dominion. So I do have some questions, just trying to fact check and actually pulling some stuff up as well. CEO Minter, you said it's roughly, your estimation is about $1 million a year would be a new contract, because we're in year 5 of an 8-year contract with Dominion, is that correct?
Guesstimate, but I think it's reasonable between the machines, procuring replacement machines, and training. I think $1 million would probably be a low estimate.
One of the things for me, as we talk about this topic, is I just want the community to row in the same direction. And what I love about this past week, and I have a lot of friends that are 49ers fans, and I have a lot of friends that are Cowboys fans. And I hear them going back to the preseason about who's better. Well, now we know who's better because they played each other and it's proven. There's a lot of talk about stolen elections, and I personally, and again, this isn't what we're talking about, but if Dominion or machines in general are the way to go, I would love to know what the cost would be. And I'm not gonna, Ms. Allen, I'm not gonna ask you to come up, of course, but I would be curious to know what the cost to audit the June election would be. And would it be severely cheaper than just canceling the contract because the community or other people might be upset with the machine? So I would like at some point to see what that cost would be, because fiscally I have a hard time looking to cancel a contract. But as I believe his name is Mr. Gardner said, like, what is the public trust worth? And that's invaluable. That's invaluable, because if we don't have, because I knocked on a lot of doors and I had a lot of people say, my vote doesn't matter, so I'm not voting, and they close the door. And maybe I'm glad if 91 of them felt the other way. No, I'm just kidding. But for me, I want everyone to know that their vote counts. I want everyone to know that their vote is valued. And so I would be very interested to know what it would cost to audit, because I think if the community, by and large, both sides, and I'll be the first, another lady, public comment, which was, I wish I could have spoke, but they said, you know, would you just step down if it was cheated? And the answer is yes. Yes. If my opponent won and that individual was cheated, I absolutely would. Because I care about what's right and I care about what's fair, because what are we all doing in government if the people can't trust the process? Because when we lose the process, we become a third world country. So my few things I'm wondering is what it would cost to audit June, and obviously I don't know, and if it's millions of dollars, then that would obviously not be the way to go. And then also, I would be curious to know, Council Cruz, I have a question. So federally, we have to count by machine, is that correct?
Under the Help America Vote Act, it does require that the disabled be able to vote independently and privately. And based on guidance that's been received by the U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, that can be accomplished using electronic systems. And for example, they gave an example saying that, you know, if you had a blind voter and he or she was given a Braille ballot, the U.S. Department of Justice said that would not be sufficient, because that's not a secret and private ballot. It would be covered separately. So the short answer is, based upon the information that I have, is that an electronic voting system would be required to ensure that the disabled are able to vote independently and privately in connection with the Help America Vote Act.
Thank you. Because one of the questions I would have would be, if we didn't cancel any kind of voting machine contract, would we be able to actually do paper and pen for county races, and what the cost, what that would be? Because I do care about the local community's trust. Not that I don't care about state and federal races, but I care more about Shasta County and the city and the water boards and the supervisor races. So I'd be curious to know, if we did keep those, as we move forward, what that would look like.
Yeah, I can't comment on the cost. I do know that any sort of a voting system that would include an electronic component, a mechanical component, does have to be certified by the Secretary of State. They've certified certain ones. Dominion's one, a couple of the ones have been mentioned. I haven't independently confirmed that. But if we were looking to establish a different type of voting system, that of course would have to be reviewed and certified by the Secretary of State. I cannot comment on how long that might last or what the cost would be.
And as we're talking about, I'd be curious to know if there'd be a representative, and I'm not sure, Chair Jones, if this, I'm not going to make a motion for this before we would, personally, before I would support a motion to possibly cancel the contract. I'd like to have a representative from Dominion here, wondering if they would work with an independent counsel, looking back to June and what their openness to that would be, because if they want to keep the contract. Because again, if they want to keep the contract, I would think there would be a level of transparency, because that's what we want. We just, at the end of the day, I just want transparency, and I just want honesty, and I just want the openness, and let the chips fall within it. That is all.
All right, thank you Supervisor Price. Supervisor Kelton.
I am also a very fiscal conservative, so I want to clear up a few things here, or maybe Council Cruz, you can verify this. So in ending the Dominion contract in subsection 6, section 6, part B, it says county may terminate this agreement without cause and 30 days written notice to contractor. Also in the same section in F, it says that this agreement is terminated, contractor shall only be paid for services satisfactorily completed and provided prior to the effective date of termination. So we will not be paying out the remaining years on the contract if we were to terminate, is that correct?
Yes, that's my understanding. Services previously.
Okay, so I want to clear that up. We are not, if we cancel this, we are not paying for the next couple of years on that. We cancel it, we walk away. The 2020 election, there was quite a few questions, and we had an opportunity, we could have looked at it and set some of these questions to bed and be done with them, but the data was destroyed as soon as it could be. So, we don't help our cause or your cause, we don't help the other side when there's no transparency. So when we have an opportunity to prove there is no voter fraud, we destroy the evidence. The 2022 primaries, I would love to have you help me, Kathy, in your office, look into those things, prove there is no voter fraud. I personally know that I feel completely 100% correct that there was not voter fraud. I won this election fair and square. A comment was made that we were elected by machines. I would like to clarify, we were not elected by machines, we were elected by the voters. That's right. Machines counted them, we were elected by the voters. And if there's any question out there that I was not elected by the voters, I would be the first one to say, let's look into this, let me prove that this is correct. I want an audit, I want to prove on my own race if there's any question whatsoever. I think we should do it on 2022 primaries just to prove once and for all whether there is or whether there isn't. That's just my 2 cents, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Kelton. Supervisor Ritter, followed by County Council.
I have a lot of questions. First of all, and we've been at this for a few years discussing this, and we have minutes from when the Dominion representative was here, and I don't know if you new members have read those minutes, but I think it's important to go through that. We were all elected by Dominion voting machines, and I'm just really curious, are we questioning the outcomes of our elections? I'm not quite sure what we're trying to accomplish here. I feel confident that when I was elected that it was legitimate. So I don't know how you feel, but you feel it's legit, okay.
Supervisor Ritter, nobody ran against you.
Okay, so I'm thinking changing the contract would cost the county about $1 million. I don't think this is a fiscally responsible decision to make a change. I just really firmly believe that. And I'm asking for, when we had Dr. Grimmer do the webinar, and there was over 100 people that participated in that, and he works for the Hoover Institute. That's a conservative think tank. And he was adamant, he said there is no proof that the Dominion machine has problems. And he said, anytime someone claims that there's a problem, tell them to prove it. And I have yet to see any proof of any problem. And I'm gonna ask Kathy to come up in a minute just to answer a couple of questions. The other point, and I've made this point over and over and over again, I know several people that are not in Shasta County the day of the election because they work out of county, they travel, and they would be disenfranchised if they were required to go in to a polling place to vote. Okay. So, and then audits cost money, and Kathy, could you answer a few questions? Do you have any idea what an audit might cost for the county? I think we need to know.
Kathy O'Neill, Shasta County Clerk, Registrar of Voters, elected through my 5th term of office. in June. I can't really address the dollar amount of an audit, because the kind of audit that is being described, the so-called forensic audit, is not lawful.
Okay.
So because it's not lawful, illegal, I have not spent any time or energy collecting costs on what it would be.
So what recourse would voters have? They'd have to contact their legislative representatives to see if they could get that changed? It's a state law, right?
It's state law, and it's regulation promulgated by the Secretary of State's office. The
Right.
Secretary of State in the area of elections has one of their primary responsibilities, aside from aggregating vote totals from the county, from all the counties, is certifying election equipment. California has the most stringent and rigorous testing protocols in the nation. And Supervisor Jones, when you talk about election experts, I hope that you're talking about people who have worked in the field for more than a couple of years. Because the experts that have been brought to the county by some of the folks here in the gallery today are not people I would consider experts. And I would encourage you to do a little bit more Google searching for experts that have longer time in the field.
You want me to search Google?
I want you to do more than listen to people who are charging a dollar amount to listen to their message at the church after they come here to talk to you. And I don't feel like we are hearing all the voices. And
I'm not sure what voices you're hearing, to be honest.
That's really not funny.
I think we need to try and have a little bit of respect.
well,
Being rude.
Supervisor Rickard, why should we have any respect? I was not contacted about this item. I wasn't asked any questions about this item. Unfortunately, Supervisor Jones, you have decided that I am not someone that you trust, but 68% of the people who showed up to vote in June do. And my job is to defend the voters of this county. That is my whole mission.
All the voters.
Exactly, all the voters. Not just the voters that
Can
you
address
want
that
me
there,
to.
please?
No, I won't do what you say, Terry, sorry.
I think
You're not the boss of me.
Terry, shut up.
Good gravy.
And I have another question. Is there a process for people to file with the state their findings of fraud? I've heard that there's fraud. Where can a person go to file their findings and submit that to the state? Is that
Secretary of State has a fraud division,
Okay,
and
So if
they
they're-
have complaints to them, and they will do investigations. They have done
Okay.
multiple investigations. In fact, I have partnered with them on investigations to prosecute people who voted more than once, etc.
okay. So that is the process, and so I would recommend that people, including you, Chair Jones, if you have all this fraud, go ahead and file a complaint with the state of California.
Kathy, I've asked you on multiple, thank you Supervisor Murphy, and I may just do that. I have asked you on multiple occasions, you can see, not only in Shasta County, but across the country, a lack of trust. You know that, you feel it, and you have to restore it. And how are you going to do that? Because it's not happening.
So your perception of what's happening
No,
in our
this-
community is your perception of what's happening in our community. In November and early December, for a 3-week period, literally every time I went into public, to my granddaughter's gymnastics event, out to lunch, to the grocery store, to Target, to Christmas shop, literally every time I went into public, someone stopped me that I have never met before to say thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing, thank you for the work your staff is doing. People who work in this field, I am not alone. Many of us are in love with this work. We are so dedicated to doing it, which is why I am willing to stand up here and get abuse from you and from some of the folks here in the gallery.
Well,
But that doesn't outweigh the stack of thank you cards I also have in my office from voters from all over the county
Kathy, I take offense to your comments that I'm abusing you. I'm asking you specific questions about restoring trust in Shasta County. Those are serious issues.
I totally agree it's a serious.
That is not
issue.
abuse.
That's why I participated in a research project, which I've been vilified for because the assumption was made. So there's a lot of assuming happening in our county right now, and I'm not sure why that is exactly, but no one called me to say, hey, what's the story with these purple postcards?
Well,
And instead of having that kind of conversation, which I would expect, quite frankly, from other elected officials, I have been vilified because they didn't know that this was not a project that cost the taxpayers even $1.
Kathy, we're not talking here today about purple postcards. We're talking about the Dominion voting contract and how we are going to trust this contract or not. And are you going to help us restore trust with Dominion or not? Because it doesn't exist within Shasta County. Not a majority of the people trust the electronic voting machine that we have.
I object to that statement. I don't believe you know that for a fact.
So you have to prove
No,
to me.
I don't.
What? But then we may have to take corrective actions with this contract. If you cannot prove to me that Dominion is safe and secure, and again, this is not trying to fight you, Kathy, but we have an important job to restore trust with the voters.
I totally agree.
But it's not happening.
The tone and the tenor of this conversation is further destroying the trust.
No.
Yes, it
No, it's
is.
not.
You're contributing to that problem
You're
by
gonna-
having this conversation over
You were
and
elected
over in
by
a public
Dominion.
way. Now, I can talk for about 2 hours about how voting systems are tested, what is the VDSG, what's the federal part of the process, how the state does that, all the testing we do inside of our office, which is available for observation, before and after every election. And we've been doing it the same way for quite a long time. With different equipment, we use different procedures. We started new procedures with this new equipment when we got it in late 2017, early 18. The idea that
I would like to recommend, Chair Jones, that
Are you making
you
a motion?
excuse me, I'm not finished. I would like to recommend that you contact Dr. Grimmer with the Hoover Institute and have this discussion. He is an expert in this field. He devotes all of his time. He has a PhD. He works with the same group that Victor Davis Hanson works with, and ask him these very questions. He is an expert, and Kathy, you and I have both had conversations with him on phone. He's a very open, brilliant man, and he will answer some of your questions so your faith can be restored in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rickard. Thank you, Kathy. We'll go back now to Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, Chair Jones. Just a couple of additional points to know. The county clerk informed me that there is currently an election that's in process. It's scheduled for March 7th involving the city of Shasta Lake. And certainly, at least as far as maintaining the status quo with the current Dominion machines, at least through that election, I would recommend, because otherwise we may be looking at some significant risks of disenfranchising voters, given the fact that that election is currently in process. Separately, the issue is, of course, we have as I mentioned to Supervisor Crye, any sort of voting system has to be certified by the state of California. There are a couple other ones that are certified, and the board can certainly ask staff to explore the options with contracting with either one of those authorities that are currently certified by the state of California. If that's the direction or provisions of it.
Well, Mr. Cruz, today, all that's on the agenda is to whether we're gonna renew this contract or not. Any other discussion about any other process is yet to come before this board, is that correct?
Yes, well, what's on the direction is to consider providing direction to staff. So if the board wanted to give direction to staff to explore an RFP for voting systems, that would certainly be within the purview of this board and would not have to disrupt the existing contract in any manner.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Supervisor Garman.
Thank you, Chair Jones. Kathy, you can probably sit down. I don't have any questions necessarily for you. Tough conversation. What is trust worth? Public trust is worth everything. Without it, we have no democracy. So I don't need to put a dollar amount to it. And I'm sitting here listening to all these different conversations, and your perception is gonna be different than Mr. Jones when you're in public. It's gonna be different in mine, because we're gonna be viewing different locations. I don't care if it's 10% of people that aren't trusting it. We need to try to address how to get their trust back, no matter which side of the aisle you're on. It doesn't matter. We should be trying to get everybody's trust, not just one side or the other. Do I believe there's cheating in Shasta County? Nope, not at all. I've been to talk with you many times. If you're a lady of high integrity, you wouldn't allow it. It's possible some outside influence comes in. I don't know. That's, I think, where some of the people have the trust issue. Could it be violated from outside sources? And I think what people are asking for is to prove that that's not happening. I don't know how you know about it. I know there's some stuff with the state and et cetera, but those all seem to be pushed aside. Pushed aside. So with this topic, it's very difficult, but I'm gonna make a motion that we look into, like we just stated, let's look into what it would cost. I'm not making a motion to get rid of the machines, don't take that wrong, Kathy, but I wanna look into what are the options. Because we need to have the options up here and what it's gonna cost. We can't just fiscally throw $1 million away. If something's, we just can't. So let's look at the options and see what they are.
I would second
All right, Supervisor Friday, do you have any other comment?
that. Yeah, I just wanted to say, Ms. Allen, as you know, I just appreciated your time absolutely in November and the 2 or 3 weeks that we spent together as those were counted. And I get it, that's the process. California does not make it easy. You didn't write the rules, so to speak. You're there to enforce them. And Council Cruz, I know this is going to be an ongoing conversation. It'll probably go much past your leave date of April, but I'm always going to try and understand and usurp as much local control as we can. And I'm going to push as much as I can for heavy local control in our own elections. So it sounds like the motion that Supervisor Garman made is we're not going to at this point look at canceling that contract possibly right now, but so I will table my question in case that comes up. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fry. I'm gonna make a counter or a substitute motion, and we'll take this one first, and we'll vote on it, and then if that passes, then your motion is moot. I'm gonna make a motion that we eliminate the contract for the Dominion voting systems.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other board discussion on this motion?
Is that so you canceling the contract right now, that's essentially the motion.
That is correct.
Would you amend that at all in terms of understanding the cost for it? Because I'm 100% behind getting rid of machines in general. Well, I would be interested in going a little farther in what Supervisor Garland said, even if we just said it was 2 weeks later. I would like just a little bit of time to do a little bit of homework, because I want to understand some of the financial implications, and I don't want to just jump into something that I'm not sure where I'm going to land. I do know I want to get rid of the machines. I 100% know that. But in terms of canceling the contract right now, I'd be curious to see, because in relation to what we're talking about in Shasta Lake, now, and that was the question I was going to bring up. I mean, could we do a hand count in Shasta Lake?
Yeah, absolutely. Easy.
The short answer, no.
$5,000.
Because of the Help America vote. And the information, there needs to be a process that exists that is certified by the state for this election that is currently in process. It just has to be. And we are in process. County clerk is currently in the process of handling that election. And to just pull out a system entirely in the middle of it, in my opinion, poses an unacceptable risk of liability and litigation exposure to this county.
Yeah,
In the middle of an election.
Yeah, I'm not super excited about being sued financially. Is there any amending that, even just to come back to with a little bit more research, Supervisor Jones, or Chairperson Jones?
I'll consider it, but Supervisor Carmen.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to support your motion, just to be clear. I want to hear what these other machines look like. I would like to hear some presentations perhaps from the other companies if possible. Because I don't want to get into from one machine to another one that does the same thing and we're back here again at the next election cycle. So, and I'm not saying I won't get rid of Dominion when it comes to that. I don't trust them. But I want to do our due diligence and look into it. We have a right to the people to do our due diligence. That's all I'm asking for. Just a little bit of time to see some different presentations, so that we can make that decision, I feel, more accurately.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Wilkie.
Yes, I think if we could agree on some kind of nonpartisan, non-biased person that's an expert in this field to come here and give us their professional opinion about the accuracy and whether it's a Dr. Grimmer or someone. Kathy, do you know of anyone that would be willing to give a presentation that was non-biased? I mean, that was, I know I participated in that webinar and it was, what?
Good luck finding that.
Well, I know, but
Non-biased.
the Hoover Institute is known for being a very conservative think tank, right? And so he's a conservative, and that's why I recommended him. But I think if I don't know if we could get him up here, but I do know he does listen to our board meetings at times. I am aware of that. And maybe he would be intrigued enough that we could have him come up and give a presentation. I think if that would help restore trust in this county, then it would be worth trying to get him here. So.
Thank you, Supervisor Rickard. Supervisor Crowder.
Council Cruz, what would be the so the date is what the special election in Shasta Lake is when?
The information that I have is that it's scheduled for March 7th, 2023. The military ballots have already gone out, and early voting begins on February 6th in 13 days.
Okay, when is the next election cycle start for where those machines would be utilized? So I mean, are we talking just biding our time for 2 months?
Well, the next election after that, and I'll have to defer to the county clerk as far as timelines, but it hasn't been scheduled yet. The next potential election would be on August 29th of 2023. That deals with the formation to create the Shasta Fire Protection District.
Supervisor Cry, I'll be willing to amend my motion to eliminate the Dominion voting machine contract at the completion of the March 7th special election. So when that is completed, so it won't be done on the 7th, but when it's completed thereafter, the elimination of the Dominion voting machine contract, that will give you time to do some research. I'll amend my motion if the second would be agreeable.
And yes, I am agreeable. I second that amended motion.
And Council Cruz, when is by law, when does that, for the electronic count federally, how fast does that contract have to be replaced? Like, what's our window?
Well, I'll have to defer to the county clerk as far as the timelines as to when she's going to need a certified voting system in place to conduct the next election. Basically, what would happen is, again, looking at the timeline here, of course, we've got a presidential primary in March of 2024, terminating the Dominion contract after March 7th, then the next question is, what's going to be in place to replace it? And that means you're gonna have to work very quickly, staff have to work very quickly to get an RFP out to look at either one of these other two systems that are certified by the state and see whether or not either of them would be, meet the needs of the county. And I don't know what that time frame would be. I would have to defer to the county clerk for that information there. I just don't know how fast that turnaround will be and the cost will be associated.
The reality, Mr. Supervisor Fry, is that there's no good time to eliminate a contract, but when we cannot restore trust, in my opinion, this is the first step to do so, and we can do it. My substantive motion has been amended so that it will not affect the March 7th special election. and it has been seconded.
So my question is, and this is the homework that I wanna do. And, I wanna understand if federally we are going to have an electronic system in place for our state and federal races, what does that look like? Because again, I wanna get rid of machines, and especially I wanna get rid of machines, at least for our county races, that I believe we have some local control over. I'm trying to understand if, and I apologize to the public, no, maybe, I mean, this is the only time we can sit and talk.
Well, I think Supervisor Friday, you'll have several months to do as much research from February and March, and we'll take this topic back up as soon as possible for the next step thereafter, and I'm sure we will do that as early as February. So, this ends a particular contract, and then the next discussion right after this, very soon, will be what is your next options, what are your choices, and what can we do? And
Well, I
also have the public weigh in as well.
Well, and I know a lot of times, when contracts are canceled and CEO Minturn, obviously, if they have a $250,000 a year or whatever that contract is, if we cancel that and come back to them and say, well, okay, fine, we canceled it, and if the other ones are $1 million, I'd be willing to bet they would still take that contract back if we chose to re-engage with them. I don't believe that they're going to then just up that to $1 million. So, okay, I'm good.
Very good, all right. Any other discussion? We have a substantive motion. It's been made and seconded. Any other discussion? Stephanie, could we have a roll call vote starting to my right?
Supervisor Cry?
Yes.
Supervisor Kellstrom?
Yes.
Supervisor Jones?
Yes.
Supervisor Garmin?
No.
And Supervisor Rickard?
No.
All right, thank you. So that passes 3-2. All right, moving on.